All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Achieved some milestones, and we had to expand the studio to accommodate really our fabulous Thursday recorded audience, my favorite recorded audience. Kim is back, everybody. Yeah.
Good morning.
A couple of days off. You know, why can't a mama take a couple of days off? There's no problem.
Kim, how are you?
We did miss you, though, and you do have a story, a legit harrowing story of saving your son from drowning.
What?
I know. It sounds, I'm not ginning this up. I'm not amplifying it. I'm not playing the drama. I am telling you that Kim's son almost lost his life in the surf. And if it weren't for the intense power, the maternal connection that Kim felt to her son, he might not be alive today.
Why are you yelling?
Because it was an incident that everyone was recording and talking about, but no one was helping out with. That was the situation on the beach. I'm going to have Kim tell you the story in just a moment. Also today, David Katz, the esteemed attorney, longtime federal prosecutor. Now he's a defense attorney in Southern California. He will join us. What's legal? What's not legal? What's constitutional? What's not constitutional? There is a meat cleaver being taken to government. There is a decapitation of government agencies. It is a reckless disregard for efficiency. The fact that they call it the Department of, what is it called? Government Efficiency? That's irony, right? I mean, that is irony because you guys aren't really looking at efficiencies. The agencies that these guys are going after, they're all concerned with restricting Elon Musk in one way or another. They're all, literally, you can go agency to agency, and Musk has regulatory issues with every single agency. Now, the newest jam is that Elon's not part of Doge because you understand it's being legally challenged. This is something we're going to talk to David Katz about. So because it's being legally challenged, the legitimacy of Doge, we talked about this before Trump was even president. You can't have this Doge. You can't just make up a government agency out of thin air, appoint some guy and have him start hacking away. But they did it because there was no instrument to stop him that was going to stop him. Congress is that instrument. But anyway, the idea somehow that you could now say he's not part of Doge, that's all legal. That's to avoid legal exposure. And we'll talk to David Katz about that and so much more. The other thing I want to get to is related to Medicaid cuts. It's funny to me that Donald Trump could be so... well, we all know he says stuff on the stump and as president that he completely doesn't follow through on. The one thing he follows through on, as you're aware, is revenge against his enemies. He's very good with follow through on that. Yeah. Vengeful pettiness is really the coin of the realm when it comes to Trump and his administration. But what he doesn't follow through on is protecting those things that he says he's going to protect. He said he's not going to touch Social Security, said he's not going to touch Medicare and Medicaid. Well, Medicaid is already on the chopping block. In the new budget, there are big cuts to Medicaid. Now, Medicaid is for those who are socioeconomically most challenged, okay, who need medical help. So if you're cancer treatments, if you have any sort of ongoing medical issue that you need help with the government paying, you're SOL soon. But we'll get to that. And I also have a wild turbo stories from the sky because the plane that flipped over, there's a very interesting thing that's happened with the people who are on board. So I will share that with you as well. And I also have Pete Hegseth news, and I have deregulation news. And one of the areas that is going to be the victim of deregulation and firings is, let me just say, you're not going to be surprised when I tell you. It's not a place that we have spoken of before in a big way, but we're going to give it some oxygen here today. So smash the like button if you would. It's a thing.
Smash it with your iron rod.
You know, we're on YouTube. We came from a radio show. The radio station, a very big, successful radio station, KGO Radio in San Francisco, went away. And we kind of panicked, went away without warning. And we said, we'll bring the show to YouTube. And then from YouTube to Spotify and iHeartRadio and all of these different Apple Podcasts and wherever you listen to podcasts, we should be available, the Mark Thompson Show. So, and the only reason we call the Mark Thompson Show is because that, again, was what it was called on the radio. We just took the radio thing and we just moved it here. And the thing about YouTube is it's put a premium on a lot of things that we didn't do on the radio. So one of them is smashing the like button. So I have to remind you to do that. I will, I saw that Mitch McConnell's not going to seek re-election. I saw that, Peter McLean. Thank you. Peter
that might
McLaren, yeah.
That's probably the only reason that he feels like he can stand up lately, right?
Yeah, I mean, Mark, did you DEI Pat Thurston yet? Yeah, we have to DEI hire Pat Thurston. She will step through. Pat's a great friend and a great friend of the show, and we will get her through too. And for those who don't know who Pat Thurston is, she's a brilliant talk show host who was, again, in the washout that was KGO. She was lost as well. So, but now she's found, and we will have her soon. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Albert, I want to ask you a technical question first before I get started, and that is, I just messed with levels here and tried to give the levels a little bit of a boost because people were saying that my level was lower than Kim's and yours, etc. So I got some emails on that. Is everything sounding okay? Is what my question to you.
Kim was a little hot in the beginning. I already fixed it, so I'm watching the levels.
Okay. Albert is watching the levels. And for those who are at home watching levels, thank you. Your feedback on levels is very much appreciated. And what I also would tell
Albert,
you,
thank
speaking
you.
of feedback, is in the David Katz segment next hour, we're going to be talking about what is a likely Supreme Court case about birthright citizenship. And the birthright citizenship thing is right there in the Constitution. It seems even for Trump's concierge Supreme Court, it would be very hard to side with Trump. He was trying to end birthright citizenship by executive order. But it's possible. I don't know. It seems extraordinary. I don't see how you do it. But that said, we have a live poll. We're going to ask David Katz to give us his prediction. But we have a live poll, and it's up right now. So if you're watching live on YouTube, you can tell us, do you think SCOTUS will side with Trump, or do you think SCOTUS will rule against Trump, with Trump or against Trump on the issue of birthright citizenship?
I mean, you would have thought that presidential immunity was kind of cut and dried as well, right? I mean, I couldn't have foreseen that ruling coming down, which makes me a little, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really tough call. I agree. I don't think most legal scholars saw the presidential immunity ruling happening the way it did. But clearly there is a real instinct, first, to side with Trump. I mean, you've got, in Clarence Thomas, you've got someone who was really, his wife is a seditionist. I mean, his wife is an absolute coup engineer. She was trying to make J6 happen. We know that from a bunch of messages that were sent. We know that she underwrote the transportation for, buses that were taking people to the rally, and then the rally then became what J6 is. So we know that in that family, the Clarence Thomas, they're on board with whatever Trump wants to do.
And then you've got the wife with the flag.
And then
right?
Alito, whose wife also flew that flag upside down, as Kim says. So we know that the fix is in with 2 of the justices, and they're all Federalist Society, I guess Christo-fascists on some level. That might overstate it, to be fair. I mean, I try to be as fair as possible, but there is a rising, certainly I would say there's an alt-right wave there when it comes to religion and how religion informs the law and how religion and government are now washing together increasingly, and how that's being defended by SCOTUS. Without getting too much into that, I would say those 2 justices then, are definitely in Trump's corner. But this may be a bridge too far for any of the others, and so we'll see. But so how will SCOTUS rule on the birthright citizenship issue with Trump or against Trump? You can vote for it in the live chat if you're on YouTube right now. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Now, before I get into the heavy stuff, I want to hear a story of rescue, and that's what this is. It was to have been. There is a Noe Marie Clarity with a $10 super chat.
That's so nice. Thanks, Noe.
Happy birthday to your son.
Yeah, really sweet.
Yeah. So your son and you and the rest of the family, you took days off from this show, which is fine. We support you. And you went somewhere. Where did you go? And then get us quickly to the rescue story, if you would.
So it's a week off from school, happens to be Jacob's birthday. And so we took our annual outing to Monterey. And by the way, this is an area where I went to high school, grown up around surf and very comfortable with, being near the ocean, have reported multiple times on people getting sucked out to sea, others going in to save them. They both die, one lives, what have you. So I'm not a stranger. I've taught my kids, you never turn your back on the ocean, all these things. But there's this little teeny tiny stretch of beach. It's called Hidden Beach in Monterey. And it's right by a fancy hotel. And there's a set of stairs and a little stretch of beach, and it looks pretty calm. It's in the bay. So Jacob wants to go stick his feet in the surf. And so we do. And I'm sitting on the steps, which are very, very, very close to him. And the waves are getting a little bigger, but it still looks manageable. And he's hooting and hollering and having a great time. And all of a sudden, he gets sucked out. There he is, playing in the surf. Okay, so you can see the waves there are getting a little bit bigger, but they're breaking right there. And then foam covering his feet. So he's having a great time.
Sure.
All of a sudden, he's getting pulled out and he's screaming, "Mama!" And so I run down the stairs and I run into the surf and I grab his hand and I'm trying to pull him forward and I'm getting sucked out. And then we're both getting sucked out. See, there it is, breaking, he's getting foam. He's maybe in up to his knees. You can see the kayaker out there. It looks kind of calm.
Yeah, it doesn't look too bad at all.
I'm yelling at him, "Crawl, crawl," as the waves push him up more toward the sand and they're sucking him back out. And he's crawling on the sand and I'm trying to crawl to get out of the ocean. But for some reason, we just hit a really big, bad set of waves that came one after another, holding me down underneath. So I'm telling him to run. He's now upright. And he's not running because he doesn't want to leave me. The whole thing was so scary.
Oh, wait a minute. So this is a weird thing. So you're able to touch ground with your feet. You're able to touch the sand.
When the waves come, then it's so powerful that it throws you around like a rag doll and pushes you down into the sand and you can't get up. I swear, Mark, I thought this is the end of me. This is how it ends. This is over. I'm done.
Wow. Wow.
The waves were so strong that it pulled my clothes off my body. And so there I am with my big old butt hanging out in the middle of the ocean or in the middle of the beach with the waves pummeling me. And it's a populated area, so there's a whole platform of people.
So people are going to come and help you is the point.
Well, I'm thinking, thank God we're at a place where, there's a lot of people around. At this point, I think Jacob is safe, but I don't know because I'm under the waves. And when I'm allowed up, I'm gasping for breath, and then another wave hits, and it's horrible.
Wow.
And I know, it's such drama. Maybe it's worse. It's not as bad as I'm making it out to be, but sure, it felt like the end. And all the people are up there, and no one is doing anything. I didn't realize everyone had their phones out, and they're all, I guess, filming.
Well, they were waiting for you to go under in your life and death struggle, and then maybe they would have come out.
They're looking for video to sell to the news agencies. I could see the headlines right now. Mother tries former KGO news anchor sucked out to the sea.
No,
in
you were right the
Monterey.
first time. They would just say
Jesus.
mother. They don't give a shit about KGO
Mother.
or
Who knows?
news anchor. Don't build up your bio for your big death
Finally.
story. Okay.
Oh no, there's a bio.
They would
Yeah.
say mother
Yeah.
tries to save son,
No,
loses
they
life.
say Mark Thompson show anchor. There you go.
Oh, wait a minute. Yes.
Now
now.
it's okay.
Do you know who I am?
Yes, I'm
kind of a big deal.
Maybe they would now. Come to think of it, they would
And so
mention it.
finally, the waves calm for a second.
Yeah.
Give me a break, and I managed to crawl up, and my knees are bloody, and I'm like haggard. And one lady yells from the top of the steps, "Do you guys need any help?" I'm like, "Are you serious right now?" I can't even respond because I'm trying to catch my breath. Thank God Jacob is up on the stairs. We managed to live. I put my clothes back on. I'm sandy. I'm bleeding. We managed to stagger back to the hotel room. But man, that was an experience. And then the whole day was just kind of, Jacob and I clinging to each other like, I can't believe we're still here. Crazy.
Yeah, that'll definitely punctuate your day.
Mm-hmm.
Did you learn a lesson from this?
I don't know I think the lesson is don't go up into your knees. Stay into your toes. I don't know. What's my lesson?
Albert, was there a lesson that she should have learned here? I don't know. I
Don't leave the
play
Mark
some-
Thompson show.
Don't mess
take
with the ocean. Maybe, I don't know.
Don't mess with the ocean. Anybody? Was there a lesson that she was supposed to learn here? I mean, I feel like this is a
Don't take
lesson
time
moment.
off from the Mark Thompson show.
Well, I mean, it is true that I don't know. I just feel as though, yeah.
And we can both swim, Mars. I mean, I've surfed before. Again, I grew up around the ocean, so I'm not like a newbie.
Well, I'll tell you, I was looking for some sad music, Albert, to play underneath her story.
Oh, where's the violins, man?
Yeah, but I don't really have. I don't have anything.
Oh, Gordon says I should have been next to him, not maybe sitting on the steps. Perhaps you're right.
Oh, that's an idea.
I don't know. With the video, it didn't seem like it was.
No, this is not sad music. This is
No,
this is like
kinda happy
lounge
and
music.
snappy.
Are you kidding? Yeah,
Poor
baby.
Jake.
So I'm sitting there. I'm having a drink on the beach, and I'm watching this lady try to save her son. I just got some new shoes. Otherwise, I would have gone out to help him. I thought they were pretty much under control. There was a crowd there, so I didn't really feel they were under any kind of immediate threat. Can I get another gin and tonic? Thank you. Yeah. Anyway, I am sorry for your life-death experience, but I'm so delighted that you made it back to the show. It's very, very intense, your story.
Yeah.
And I think that also the lesson, and I'm surprised you didn't get this because I really repeat this lesson repeatedly, as I do repeat lessons occasionally. My lesson always is don't count on people.
You just don't get it, do you? You don't.
Lesson.
I don't count on anybody. I don't count on anybody. I think things are coming out of here distorted, Albert. I may have to do a thing here in the break during Kim's news.
You sound
Keep
good to
your
me.
kids close, says Eddie Dragon 510. Don't trust the beach waves. That's exactly right. That's the real truth of it, isn't it? So, I know you didn't tweet and you didn't blue sky. I know you didn't, Albert. Did you?
I didn't know.
busy
I was
scrambling.
getting some last videos.
I know you were getting some last minute thing. I did, so don't worry about it. It's okay.
Thank you.
You can take the day off for that. All right, Albert. Fine. So,
Albert, thank you.
now, with that behind us, let's get into some news. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I was dumb. I was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better swimmer. Who said
Yeah.
that? That was fun.
Jim. That's Jim. I like that.
That's very funny. Very funny. I'd love to do a little something about what's going on with Medicaid cuts. Can we, what did I give you, Albert? I gave you the story on Medicaid. Play the guarantees that Trump has offered on protecting Medicare and Medicaid. I don't think that's the stuff in the gate. I sent you something from X, which is kind of a mashup of him talking about the fact that he won't touch Social Security, won't touch Medicare or Medicaid. But of course, that's exactly what is happening. And he's touching Medicare and Medicaid. And I do believe that he will touch Social Security. And here's how he'll touch Social Security, just to tip it so you can say, oh, I heard it there. I've mentioned this before, but I will just to underscore it because it's going to happen. They're going to recharacterize what they're doing with Social Security. It is not a cut, but as a new kind of improvement to Social Security. That's what they're doing right now with government, right? It's improved. We're getting the fat, we're getting the inefficiencies out of government when, of course, they're not doing that at all. They're recklessly cutting, and they're actually cutting key critical positions across government. Go ahead, play this is a little bit of a mashup of what Trump has been saying.
Is this the YouTube or the X? Because the X one is about golf. The one that you sent me was a golf one.
Oh, that's I didn't send you the other one?
No.
Oh, maybe it is YouTube then. Try YouTube then. Okay, sorry. I send Albert all of these videos, and I don't know what. Yeah, these are the Medicaid cuts. Anyway, all right. So this is where the budget sits, and these are the plans. Let's run this, and just know that. One of the things that Trump has said repeatedly is that, we're not going to touch these programs because he knows that these programs are vital. But more to the point, leave that aside, he knows that these are politically not viable to talk about when it comes to cutting government spending. Go ahead, Albert.
Judiciary and Homeland are both basically border-oriented spending. And then defense, which both parties to a considerable degree needs to have spent more on them. So roughly $300 billion more spending. But then they're talking about cutting a lot of spending. And so the Energy Commerce Committee is tasked with cutting $880 billion worth of spending. It's expected that could be heavily out of Medicaid, could represent about 10% of our Medicaid spending. And so they're very focused on spending on Medicaid. But there's another guy who's not so focused on Medicaid. Take a listen.
Look, Social Security won't be touched. Other than if there's fraud or something, we're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Nothing.
You don't have to. Now, if there are illegal migrants in the system, we're going to get them out of the system and all of that fraud, but it's not going to be touched. We're going to love and cherish Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. We're not going to do anything with that other than if we can find some abuse or waste, we'll do something, but the people won't be affected. It'll only be more effective and better.
So this wasn't a campaign promise. This is stuff he said since he's been president, contradicting what the House is doing. So it's going to be a very interesting process on Medicaid, which is obviously a very sensitive subject. And by the way, programs like Medicaid, like food stamps that he's talking about cutting as much as 20%, the House talking about cutting as much as 20% of, red states actually get a disproportionate amount of this money. So it's going to be interesting to see how Congress people hear what they hear in their districts and what they say. Student loans, another big target, could cut about 10% out of student loans. And then there's another $500 billion of unspecified spending. 62 of it would be what's called oversight. Those are federal pensions. So he's talking about cutting, they're talking about cutting $50 billion out of federal pensions. But when you add all this up, the administration, which says it's going to reduce the deficit, actually has a plan to increase the deficit by $2.8 trillion over the next 10 years. And so if you look here, this is the same chart we just looked at. You add in these new deficit increases, and you can see that instead of even dropping for a couple of years, it doesn't drop at all, and it just goes up further and further.
So thank you, Albert. That was perfect, and that's exactly in that video was the stuff I wanted you to see. So sorry about that. We exchanged a lot of videos, and so sometimes it's hard to keep track. But you can see that they are going to be making cuts, at least if these proposals go through, to programs that are benefiting a lot of their constituency. And I have to tell you something. I'm troubled by this because I think we are a wealthy nation and we should try to help those in need. And so that maybe that's a liberal thing. I don't know if you, I mean, again, I think the old labels don't really apply. Liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. Clearly, they're probably Republicans who go, I don't even recognize my party. But all of that said, I think it worth noting that these cuts to Medicaid will affect his constituency, the people who show up at his rallies. In large measure, they are people who have availed themselves of Medicaid services. So it's more than a little bit noteworthy that the shoe will pinch in those states that have supported Donald Trump. Now, the other bizarro world we live in is that it probably won't affect his support. I mean, it seems as though these people are ready to, cut off their leg for this guy. They don't care what happens with their own poverty, their own illness, their own family. They are so in the thrall of this man. It is a true cult that he might be able to get this stuff through. I mean, because the wealthy don't care about this at all. And I don't mean all wealthy people at all, but I'm talking about those who are represented by this policy. And so I think there are two noteworthy things. A, he said he wasn't going to touch it. And B, that now that he's going to cut it, and I think one way or another they're going to try to cut it, it will affect directly many of his supporters. The states with the highest SNAP participation rates as of November of 2022 are New Mexico, Louisiana, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Oregon, Illinois, Alabama, Massachusetts. Those are food stamps, right? SNAP.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and it goes on. Alabama, Massachusetts, Nevada, North Carolina, but you can see the
mostly red states.
Higher percentages are there in Oklahoma, West Virginia, Louisiana. Those are full-on Alabama red states.
Yep.
So, it's like damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead with Trump. But that's his situation on Medicare. Meantime, on the other side of Washington, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, he put that cocktail down long enough to tell us that the military will be getting cuts. Now, he's saying drastic cuts over the next 5 years. The exception, anybody? Border security. There is a new memo. It just came out this week. It calls for military leaders to provide a proposal for 8% in budget cuts each year for the next 5 years. The proposals for the massive cuts to the Pentagon's budget of approximately $850 billion due by the 24th of this month. And it was issued the day before Trump endorsed this budget plan, which includes, in addition to that Medicaid cut that we talked about, $100 billion increase in defense spending. So Hegseth is telling everybody at the Pentagon, I need 8% across the board cuts. Trump, who is all about waste, fraud, abuse, efficiency, that's what's represented, right? He's actually increasing the Pentagon budget by $100 billion. And as everyone knows, there is no waste, fraud, and abuse like the Pentagon waste, fraud, and abuse. It's insane. That place is a monument to grift. That's one of the things about Ukraine that's wild to me. Ukraine was a cash cow for so many of the defense contractors. So many American companies. 70% of the money that was earmarked for Ukraine, 70% of the Ukraine money went to defense contractors in this country. So from a pure business standpoint, you would have thought Trump would be on board with that. There's a lot more going on with Ukraine than money. I think Trump and Putin have an unholy alliance, and it is really clear that Trump is now singing from the Putin hymnal. But he's also just making up figures. So as long as we're talking about money, he says that $350 billion has been spent on Ukraine. That's BS. I think it's closer to 180. And look, you may have a problem with spending money there, but I just told you a lot of that money stays here. And a lot of the Pentagon budget, to get away from Ukraine and back to the Pentagon and the cuts, a lot of the Pentagon budget money never leaves the Beltway. It's all about the defense contractor lobby. If you look at even the Department of Defense and those who have run it, I mean, aside from Pete Hegseth, who was hired off of the Fox News Channel weekend host set, I mean, they asked him to come in from the couch and pass the makeup trailer long enough to then run the Pentagon. But if you actually look at the last Trump administration, I mean, the guy who was Department of Defense head, he was a defense contractor before that. I mean, the world of Washington is an incestuous world. And that might have, to people who are MAGA heads, been appealing to you. Like you liked that Trump was outside that. You know, the incestuous nature of Washington might have bothered you to the point that you felt, I want to bring in an outsider. But there is also a quality of complete disregard for how things are done in Washington that will come back and bite the American people. And that's the sad part. It's not enough to be an outsider. You have to know how to get things done, how to administrate, how to manage, and how to manage Washington. And you have to surround yourself with good people. He hasn't. He surrounded himself with the Pete Hegseths of the world, with people who will share his desire for revenge and grievance. And that's what's happening today with the Kash Patel confirmation. It looks as though Kash Patel will likely get through. Isn't that right, Kim? I think they're voting on that, or they're close to a vote today. And so you have, he is confirmed. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah,
so you have in the Trump cabinet now those who will say anything to get confirmed. I mean, this is the way. That's why these confirmation proceedings are on one level, kabuki theater. But on the other level, and I do want to make this point because I know everybody may say, or many may say, well, why do we even do them? They're just a waste of time. Because in those hearings, you do hear some specifics that you need to hear. You need to hear about Patel. You need to hear about Hegseth. You need to hear about various allegations. Even if the fix is in, which it is, you still need to hear about these things. But now you've got Patel and you've got Bondi, and I'd suggest, and we'll talk to David Katz about this in the next half hour, and next little after the top of the hour, the next hour. I'd suggest that there's some dark days ahead for the DOJ and for the FBI. And I don't know how the chips will fall, but I don't think they'll fall in any kind of positive way.
Did you see the story about Senate Democrats who crossed the aisle and ended up voting for some of Trump's nominees, now having regrets and saying, oh, wait a minute, we didn't realize. So they had asked these pointed questions and were blatantly lied to by some of these nominees. And then moments after the confirmation was done, days, the nominees turned around and did the exact opposite of what it was that they told the confirmation hearing, what they said at the confirmation hearing that they would do. I mean, saying one thing to get confirmed and 2 days later turning around and doing the exact thing you said you wouldn't do. Yeah. And so now there are apparently some of the Democrats who crossed the line to vote with the Republicans who are like, oh, now I have big regrets. I wish I wouldn't have trusted him or her. I wish I wouldn't have voted that way.
It's crazy, and I hate to be playing hardball party politics because, as I say, I think there are flaws with the Democrats. But if you're really going to play the party of the opposition, you have to oppose. I mean, look at what Newt Gingrich did. He's patient zero on the way in which Washington is completely divided. So when you talk about the partisanship, the hyper-partisanship of Washington, how nothing can get done because everybody's about Democrats and Republicans and they couldn't be farther apart, Newt Gingrich started all of that. He literally had a meeting to decide we're going to block everything that the Democrats want to get done. That's all we do. We're the obstructionist party of opposition. And the Democrats need to do the same thing. So the idea somehow that they cross the aisle to somehow support anything, I think doesn't speak to the opposition party if they want to be that. I mean, you know, I'm not the institutionalist that John Rothman is, who comes through here occasionally, or Joe Biden. One of the big issues I had with Joe Biden is he's such an institutionalist. You know, he just believes in the institutions of Washington. But these people don't. Look at what they did with Doge. I mean, this is how much they don't believe in institutions. They bring in some guy, Elon Musk. He is a major contractor, U.S. contractor with big interests, moneyed interests at the federal level. He brings him in with a handful of his SEAL Team 6 of techies bros, and they go into the Treasury Department, the IRS, USAID, and they start firing people. I mean, that's how, there's no institution in Washington that supports that, Joe Biden, and you institutional Democrats. Now, the institutions of the law are now being brought to bear on some of this, and we'll see how they hold up. But I'd suggest, and I want to ask David Katz and Kim, if I don't, please remind me.
Okay.
The ways in which to enforce the law, even if you get the legal judgments, the ways in which you enforce the law may be completely obviated by this crew. I mean, they don't pay attention to the, what are you going to do? Send U.S. Marshals to the White House and U.S. Marshals to get Elon Musk? I mean, the courts have a way of enforcing things. They have marshals. But these guys aren't going to, they're already talking about flipping the bird to whatever decisions come down. The U.S. District Court ruled on appeal that monies that were designated for foreign countries in USAID, those monies do need to be dispersed. That was a ruling by the federal district court on appeal. And what did Trump say? He said, I'm not going to do it. So now what? So this is what I want to talk to David Katz about when we get him on in the next hour. I'm just looking at these comments. You can comment live on YouTube now. And by the way, in delay, most people take the show in on delay. Please leave comments if you are moved to. I read all the comments, every single one of them. And I really appreciate, that's why I'm exhausted all the time, because there are a lot of comments to read sometimes. But I really appreciate not only the feedback, but oftentimes the insight that you guys have. Peter McLaren, some of the Dems fear getting kicked out, say they are siding with the GOP. They don't have hardcore Dems. They'll go with whomever will help them keep their job. Yes, and to be fair, that is politics. You know, you have to take care of your constituency. But I'll tell you what's happening on the GOP side is GOP members of Congress are afraid to push back. I mean, you can see that. And why are they afraid to push back? Anybody? They're afraid to push back because Trump is more popular than they are. That's their real issue. Trump is more popular in their district, oftentimes, than they are. So when that ceases to be the case, then I think you'll get more pushback. But otherwise, it's just pure politics. It really is. And it's depressing that it's just that. It's a sad day when I agree with Bannon and Pence. Oh, because they're... with Bannon and Pence. Bannon is anti-Musk. Is that what you mean?
Bannon is anti-Musk, and Pence came out, I think, yesterday or the day before, disagreeing with Trump's stance on Ukraine, saying, no, Ukraine did not start the war with Russia. That did not happen. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to have a quick a sip of my...
Yeah. Daniel, it's pretty bad when Pence is the one with the integrity in the room.
This is the Coachella Valley Coffee. They are a sponsor of the show. And because they're a sponsor of the show, they'll give you 10% off if you use our discount Mark T at checkout, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Coachella Valley, they have teas and coffees and everything. They're spectacular. That's the best coffee I've ever tasted. I'm literally telling you, I've tasted coffee from all around the world. This is the best coffee. I'll just take one more sip, and it is delicious. And they're tasting notes on all their beans. Their beans are all hand roasted. It's a boutique roastery. They really take a lot of pains to make sure that you're happy with what they send you. So again, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, but use our discount code Mark T at checkout. And right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am I'm wanting to get a little bit of, can I do a turbo version of Stories from the Sky just to take a step back from Trump and Musk and all this? I have a little follow-up on that plane that got flipped on landing. And we do a segment here called Stories from the Sky. And I don't want to do a full segment, Albert. Can I just do a turbo version, like just because I think it's, okay. So let's do it. This is Stories from the Sky.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Enough is enough! I have had it with these monkey-fighting snakes on this Monday to Friday plane! Everybody strap in!
That Delta flight that landed in Toronto, it flipped. Each passenger on that jet that crashed and flipped upside down in the snow, each passenger is being offered $30,000.
That's it?
What?
They were upside down on the runway.
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Yeah, what the hell? They just offered me the lousy $30K. As of today, one passenger is still in the hospital. Delta said 21 of the 80 people on board were brought to hospitals with injuries after the crash. The payment offered to passengers has no strings attached. That's nice. Does not affect their rights, a spokesperson for Delta said in an email. The aircraft design is being credited by experts and the cabin crew's quick response for the fact that there were no fatalities on the flight. It was a Minneapolis-based regional airline called Endeavor Air. That was a Delta flight, I guess. Meaning they're a Delta subsidiary or... The Endeavor crew performed heroically, said Delta Chief Executive Ed Bastian. He commended the crew for their professionalism and said safety is embedded into our system.
I mean, how much is the ride from hell worth to you?
$30,000 is not nothing, Kim. I mean, Kim lives pretty big, so maybe that's why she doesn't see it as a big... I think $30,000 is a lot.
No.
The Bombardier CRJ 900, which is what obviously the thing was, flying from Minneapolis, attempted to land at Toronto Airport around 2:15 p.m. local time and appeared to clip a wing as it touched down. I'm still unclear exactly as to what happened. It was the intensity of the landing that caused that wing to break off? Is that what happened?
That's what it looked like. I'm afraid to show the video. I think we would get demonetized, maybe.
Yeah, let's not show the video, but it is, they don't know to this moment exactly what caused the crash. So
yeah, but on this certain aircraft, you could see the engines are actually on the back. They're very small aircrafts, and they're not actually connected to the wings. So I'm sure if the engines were connected to the wings, this probably wouldn't have been good.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. Interesting. Also, I'm wondering if the snow helped, because there was a fire. I mean, there was a pretty big fire.
Wing caught fire. Right? Yeah.
And I'm guessing, I mean, this is that the snow helped prevent that fire from spreading. I mean, it seems as though that might be the case. But anyway, $30,000. Kim says she wants more. She's holding out for more.
I mean, these people came very close to losing their lives.
Well, your son was rescued from an incident where he came close to losing his life, rescued by you.
Apparently, I owe him 30 grand, I guess. I don't know.
That's exactly my point. Yeah. That's Stories from the Sky for today.
This has been Stories from the Sky. The captain has turned off the seatbelt sign, and you are now free to move about the cabin.
All right, everyone. We've got a lot going on today. I have way more in Stories in the Sky, including the FAA. You know, there have been cuts at the FAA, and and again, they cut at the FAA just as a follow-up because I mentioned it. They cut at the FAA people who are critical. These are not, again, they don't do any evaluation as to, if you're on board as a signatory to this whole craziness with Doge, which you shouldn't be, because this is a concoction of Trumps to bring in Musk and essentially looking for money for a tax cut. And the other thing that Musk is doing, as I've mentioned to you before, is he's going after agencies first that have issues with his SpaceX, Tesla, et cetera, where there's regulatory clamp on so much of what he's doing, okay? To an agency, you can see FAA, USAID, IRS, all of these places have issues with Musk. He's involved in lawsuits with them. So these regulatory agencies, of course, he wants to dismantle. So the FAA is just, again, another casualty of him just going in and eliminating the agency. Essentially, they're getting rid of critical people in all these agencies, critical programs and people. So that's the case with the FAA. Some who maintain critical air traffic control infrastructure have been fired. Many of these workers were probationary employees. You know, they went after them not because they're bad employees, not because there were any complaints about them. In fact, many of them just received glowing reviews. I was reading the other day, just yesterday, I think I was reading that these people, some of them had just been awarded outstanding employee plaudits from their boss. And then this guy comes through and he just decapitates the whole crew. Anyway, many of these workers at the FAA were probationary employees, you know, those employed for less than a year. They didn't have the job protection, so they could come through and get rid of them. And they, again, air traffic controllers, engineers, technicians, these are all people who are part of the constellation of people let go by DOGE. Utterly insane. But that's the latest. That was the FAA. They've gotten rid of critical people, and now they're like, oh, wait a minute. That's that. That's the follow-up on
The Mark Thompson Show.
Speaking of AI, Elon Musk has debuted Grok 3. It's an AI model that he says outperforms ChatGPT and DeepSeek. Now, DeepSeek is the Chinese version of ChatGPT. There are a bunch of different AI models out there. I had dinner the other night with somebody who uses all of these different AI programs from different sources to do different things, and it was fascinating because some of them are better at certain things than others. And Musk's latest is this Grok 3. It's a startup that is trying to keep up with all the other startups that are associated with AI. This is Musk live streaming on X with leaders of that startup. And he says it performs better across math, science, and coding benchmarks than Google's Gemini or OpenAI's GPT, Anthropic's Claude 3.5, and DeepSeek's V3 model. It's not clear how it compares to other reasoning models like OpenAI O3 Mini, DeepSeek R1. This might mean more to some of you than others. Mm-hmm. But they described this, the new features associated with this AI as advanced web searching with deep search, the ability to code online games, and to essentially reason through more complex problems. So you see, with machine learning, you'll have the machine coding for you. You'll have the machine AI birthing new aspects to all of these, as I understand it, all of these different programs that you might be part of, everything from gaming to other technical breakthroughs. So you can literally have AI create these things for you. But the AI competition is intense, and I don't know that Musk's announcement about how good his AI is even true. I mean, the one thing we've gotten a nice big chunk of in the last month is the load of BS that comes out of Elon Musk. I mean, he's making it up as he goes along. Look at what he did with that Social Security lie. Mm-hmm. That Social Security lie is a total lie, start to finish. So he's at Social Security, which he shouldn't be allowed in the building in. He shouldn't be allowed near all of this. So he's at Social Security, and he's now talking about all of the fraud and abuse and how people are at Social Security who are 150 years old, people who are getting Social Security checks are 150 years old, 175 years old. That's just not happening. It's just not happening. Social Security and the IRS both are two of the most efficient organizations in all of government. And Social Security, again, the inefficiencies are below 1%. Any kind of fraud and abuse or inefficiencies below 1%. So they've identified fraud in Social Security. Again, it's below 1%. What is it? 0.8%, I think is what it is. It looks like a big number because Social Security it deals with big numbers. And at the IRS, what does the IRS do for America? Brings in revenue. And still, the IRS layoffs are intense. And as I've mentioned before, they're most intense for the high end, for those investigators, IRS agents, and the investigative bodies within the IRS that are charged with going after white-collar criminals and the most wealthy. You need highly skilled people to go after those who have a lot of money and file returns that have fraud associated with them because they're very complicated returns. And they have people there who are committed to that. They're not making a lot of money. Nobody's making a lot of money in government. Even at these big agencies, even when you're running a big agency, you might make $250,000 a year as director of the FBI. People do it because they want to serve their country. I mean, it's a really prestigious job. Look, being president of the United States pays, what, $400,000 a year now? And these rich guys who go become president of the United States, and they're all rich. I mean, Trump is filthy rich, of course. He's mostly filthy, and then he's a little rich. But the point I'm trying to make is simply people do this, I think, out of a sense of decency and wanting to serve their country. And you can have legitimate issues with those who run these organizations, but all I'm trying to say is that there's just not a lot of money there. So, my Lyft driver doesn't like Putin, says Spencer Jeff. Putin is not a super likable guy. And, once he's invaded a sovereign nation, makes it a really, really tough situation for you to love him. But I want to take a little news and commentary diversion with my darling Kim. If you're just joining us, Kim cheated death. I am not overstating it.
I did.
She cheated death in a situation with surf in Monterey, rescuing her son, who would have most certainly gone under had it not been for Kim going in and rescuing him. They both survived this brush with death. It's impressive. And I'm saying it in a mocking way, but I really mean it because I have trouble with sincerity. But I'm so glad that you made it, Kim. I really am glad.
Thank you. Happy to be here, proud to serve.
Okay.
We could try ignoring it, sir.
No, I will not. I think it must get some oxygen. Before I get to Kim's news, I do want to tell you that Courtney and I have fallen in love with a plumbing service. And I know what you're saying. Oh, well, they are paying to be on the show. No. We paid the full ticket for this big plumbing job. And we had interviewed a lot of different plumbers. And there were a lot of rip-off artists, and there were a lot who were not standing by any kind of guarantee. These guys were great. And so they said, we'd love to maybe just get the word out if you're that excited about us. And so we can start a little, it's like a mini sponsorship. So since we're so excited about them, we're excited about telling you about them. It's just that. It's a little chance for us to mention them. One Day Rooter and Plumbing. It's the number one, if you're Googling it. One Day Rooter and Plumbing. It's a family-owned and operated outfit. They're in Southern California. So if you know somebody in Southern California, in Pasadena, in Los Angeles, in Orange County, they serve all of Orange County and LA County. Let them know about this because there is a cool offer to those who mention our show. One Day Rooter and Plumbing will do everything. Sewer, drain, experts. They are brilliant. They had cameras that they dropped through, and they were lower cost than anybody else we talked to. So low cost, family owned and operated, and they stand by their work. Get in touch with them. OneDayRouterandPlumbing.com. You can reach them by email, info@OneDayRouterandPlumbing.com. Again, it's the number 1, info@OneDayRouterandPlumbing.com. When you do, send them an email or call them, go to their website, whatever, mention our show. That will get you 10% off. And if you are a senior or military or first responder, you get another 5% off. So that's a total of 15% off. OneDayRouterandPlumbing.com. Again, mention the Mark Thompson Show. Tell your friends in Southern California, in LA, in Orange County, tell them if they have any kind of plumbing situation, they should take this offer while it's on the table. I think it's only good through the end of the month, though, so not much longer. Right now, mention the Mark Thompson Show and get that 10% discount. OneDayRouterandPlumbing.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on, everybody. It's our Thursday show. David Katz, the brilliant legal analyst. He is one of the greatest legal analysts in the English-speaking world. Not kidding. You've heard him on London radio, on the BBC, across America from New York to Los Angeles, and down to New Zealand and Australia. I'm telling you, if they speak English and have media and have a legal issue, and right now you need a lawyer with you almost all the time to figure out, is that legal? Can they do that? Is that constitutional? Can we do that? You've definitely heard David Katz. He will join us in just a few minutes. Kim's News and then David Katz. By the way, we have a live poll going. The poll is what will happen with the SCOTUS decision on birthright citizenship, because the appeals court has not sided with Trump. They've sided against Trump. They've said, hey, it's right there in the Constitution.
And it wasn't one judge, it was a panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. They said, no.
How will SCOTUS rule on birthright citizenship? With Trump or against Trump? You can vote now in the live chat, and then we'll share those results with David and get his opinion. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The Senate confirms Kash Patel as the next director of the FBI. The vote, 51-49. Senators Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins were the only Republicans who voted against Patel. Democrats like California's Adam Schiff say Patel will not put the public's best interests first.
Oh, my God. The public's best interest won't even be, that's not even going to be on the table. Yeah.
Public's best interest? Huh?
Yeah. I'll tell you what's the best interest is going to go after Donald Trump's opponents, people who haven't gotten the word yet.
Not a good day for the markets, Mark. Better check that 401k. The stocks are plummeting on Wall Street today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has been down more than 600 points at times today. NASDAQ has been down over 150 points in today's session as well. This after Walmart posted a disappointing forecast, and as other major retailers have been trading lower as well.
It's a buying opportunity, Kim. Buy on the dip.
Oh, is that it? Did you notice that prices are going up? The price of gas skyrocketed. I noticed. I thought the prices were supposed to come down.
Yeah, they were. Well, to be fair, he said they would come down on day one. And maybe it was only day one that they came down. I don't know. But I think just checking the records, it doesn't even look like they came down on day one. So
I mean, the eggs aren't cheaper. The gas isn't cheaper. What happened?
He's got his best people on it, Kim.
Okay. Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, as Mark mentioned, says he will not be seeking re-election next year. The Republican lawmaker made the announcement in a speech on the Senate floor on his 83rd birthday Thursday. McConnell first elected to the Senate in 1984. Wow.
Yeah.
More Americans are worried about the Department of Government Efficiency's cuts impacting programs like student financial aid and Social Security payments. In a new Reuters Ipsos poll, 58% of Americans said they're worried about delays to those payments. President Trump named tech billionaire Elon Musk to head the agency. We don't know who's really in charge of it now, but the White House noted earlier this week he's technically not part of Doge. And then Trump said he is part of Doge, so who knows?
We'll talk to David Katz about that, because that was all just to avoid the legal ramifications of him being.
Yeah, someone needs to give Trump that memo because he doesn't understand. There are reports that New York Governor Kathy Hochul will not use her power to remove New York City Mayor Eric Adams from office for now, but she will be imposing state oversight on his administration. Multiple sources say that includes creating a role of a new deputy inspector general to manage the city's operations. New guardrails will also reportedly include limiting the mayor's legal power and giving the city council speaker, controller, and public advocate the authority to take legal action against the federal government. This, as a judge, could decide today whether or not to toss federal corruption charges against Adams. He's been facing backlash, including the resignations of several federal prosecutors and deputy mayors over allegations that he made a deal with the Trump administration to coordinate with its immigration crackdown in exchange for a Department of Justice order to drop his case. This is a saga, I'll tell you. Man. Megyn Kelly is speaking out against Tom Hanks' portrayal of a President Trump supporter on last week's Saturday Night Live 50th anniversary special. You know you're on the right side of things when Megyn Kelly is speaking out against you. The actor reprised his role in a new Black Jeopardy sketch where Hanks initially rejects a handshake from the game's host, played by Kenan Thompson. Kelly, a former Fox News and NBC host, claimed in an interview with Sky News that Saturday Night Live hates conservatives, and so, she said, does NBC. She called it a left-wing echo.
Oh, lost Kim, did we? Yeah. Left-wing echo chamber, is that what you're going to say?
She called him and she called him a snob. Yeah.
Okay.
A snob. You're a snobby.
The left-wing echo chamber I was okay with, but when you called me a snob, it really got to me.
It really hurt. That cut deep.
God almighty.
CPAC 2025 underway near Washington, D.C. Vice President J.D. Vance spoke this morning at the political conference that bills itself the most influential gathering of conservatives in the world. He praised President Trump's efforts to cut federal spending as well as his immigration policies. This year's gathering is expected to be a celebration of Trump's MAGA movement after the Republicans' sweeping victory in November. Trump is expected to speak at that conference on
I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, all right. Well,
what can you tell us about the scene?
Well, the CPAC people are all in Washington, Larry. They're saluting their new Lord and Savior, Donald Trump.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Most of the tables and chairs are being set up by people who are here illegally, Larry. I don't know what's going to happen next year when all those people are not here.
What can you tell us about the scene?
All right. CPAC. We'll keep you posted.
U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is announcing an investigation into California's high-speed rail project. He was at Union Station in Los Angeles saying that former President Biden promised another $4 billion to California for high-speed rail, but he is now directing the Federal Rail Administration to conduct a compliance review of funding to the California High-Speed Rail Authority. He was critical about the management of the project, suggesting California has very little to show for the billions of federal dollars granted to the state. He said, hey, California free to keep investing its own money into a rail line. He doesn't see it being completed until 2035 at the very earliest.
Who made those remarks? Sorry?
That was U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In Los Angeles, Children's Hospital Los Angeles, they haven't changed their policy on hormone and other treatments for young people who want to undergo transgender care, but they did recently pause treatment after an executive order from President Trump. The order has been put on hold by federal judges issuing temporary restraining orders, but still, the hospital, this again, Children's Hospital of Los Angeles, is holding off on providing gender-affirming care that was the target of Trump's order. There is a woman from Venezuela who lives in Culver City, and she is suing the Trump administration over an executive order that could have her deported in a little more than a month. The lawsuit accuses Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem of illegally revoking an 18-month extension of temporary protective status that President Biden granted Venezuelans. Noem's order reverses that status for about 350,000 Venezuelans living here in the United States.
That was a big deal. That was really surprising to me that they went after that group that was protected by Biden in a special order. Maybe nothing should surprise me, but I was a bit surprised by that.
This lady is 49. She's a food delivery driver. She's brave to step up and sue. She's a total badass. She and the other 350,000 Venezuelans could lose protected status as of April 7th. So she's suing. We'll see how this goes.
That's something maybe to mention to Katz as well, because I'd be curious, from a legal standpoint, she should do what the Trump people do, which is delay, but she needs help, probably does have some help. I mean, they're legal institutions, built to help people who don't have the money and the finances necessarily to go after the government. I mean, the government is, limitless money. That's how they ruin people, right? But more to the point, to protect herself, she may need to drag this out. Maybe that's the best chance.
Governor Newsom proposing a $125 million program to help wildfire victims. This would be for homeowners whose homes were damaged or destroyed by natural disasters dating back to 2023 and are now at risk of foreclosure. That would mean victims of the Palisades, Eaton, Park, Franklin fires could all be eligible for relief. Stanford University being called a hostile campus for those who consider themselves pro-Palestinian protesters. There's a new report from the Council on American Islamic Relations in the Bay Area. They say Stanford is getting such a designation due to reported negative treatment of students who have pro-Palestinian views. Another second incident at the Monterey County battery facility, raising concerns about health and safety. A fire at the Vistra Energy battery storage facility in Moss Landing started Tuesday, led to nearby residents being told to close their windows and doors up again.
What's going on at that place? This is a place where there are batteries.
It's a huge battery center.
And there's all this toxic, when there's a fire, there's all this toxic discharge, and it affects the community surrounding. And they can't seem to stop having fires there.
No, just weeks ago, they had a massive fire. And now here this week, we have another incident. Jeez. Researchers at the University of Virginia believe they've made a promising discovery that could help reverse baldness. Yeah, I know. You're thinking, really? Yes. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation details recent tests done on a protein called CROX20, K-R-O-X, CROX20. Sounds like a TV station.
Yeah.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, that's great.
Reporting live on CROX20. The tests show
right now it's mating season and they're hungry.
Let's go to Crocs 20's Kim McAllister for more.
That's not fake. That's real.
All right, let's see. Dr. Fauci, what tell me about the baldness cure or whatever it is.
The tests show that stem cells containing the protein may be responsible for hair growth. Small amounts of this protein is present in hair follicles beneath the scalp, even in those who are already bald or balding. And researchers think reactivating this CROX20 protein found in those follicles could lead to new hair growth. You stay with CROX20 for continuing coverage.
Yeah. Well, this is exciting anti-baldness news, and you know who's behind that study? That's right. I was going to say that's right. And Dr. Schopausen's work often unheralded, but it's nice that it's finally getting a little bit of oxygen.
We're going to get some more booze tonight. The United States and Canada will meet tonight in the final of the NHL's four-nation face-off in Boston. The United States took down Canada Saturday 3-1 round robin play. So that continues. And lastly, because I know David Katz just popped on in, there is a new bill in the California state legislature looking to recognize the elusive Bigfoot as the state's official cryptid. The legislation proposed by Assemblymember Chris Roger would designate Bigfoot as the official mascot of the Golden State of California. It would be a hotbed of Sasquatch sightings since the late 1950s, leading to Bigfoot becoming our state mascot. So,
I don't even know if I followed that, but all right, great.
Get the important news here on the Mark Thompson Show. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It's a little bit of heaven in your coffee cup. What's in the cup today, Mark?
I've got the El Cotillo espresso. It was just we just made a we ground it, even though it says espresso as the bean. That's just the bean. We ground it for drip, and it's just perfect. I'll tell you, it just is a full, rich, magnificent.
So delicious.
I love it.
You know, I took my vanilla bean tea from Coachella Valley Coffee in a little baggie, and I brought it with me to Monterey, and I had it the whole time I was there.
Isn't that great? I'm telling you, this stuff is so good. Tea or coffee. Go to their website. There are a lot of different tasting notes so you can navigate your way through and get some good stuff. And anything you get on their site. And remember, it's all hand roasted, and this is fresh crop. One of the things about coffee, I'll just tell you this quickly. And sadly, I'm so into this coffee thing. I've got a $1 jillion espresso machine, and I've got 3 different burr grinders, and so I know a little something about coffee. One of the things about coffee is that you'll find discounted beans in a lot of places on the internet, and you go, oh my gosh, look at there's organic beans in there. They're only $8 a pound or whatever it is. That stuff's been lying around a long time. This is all fresh crop, so you're getting a different kind of taste experience. And again, they hand roast everything. This is a magnificent crew. You've met the Roastmaster General here on the show. So do check them out and get the bean and the roast that's right for you. It's CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and definitely use our discount code, MarkT, at checkout. 10% off anything on the site. Tea, coffee, merch, whatever you get, they'll take 10% off. So enjoy.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Hey, Mark. It's George Santos here. A lot of people are telling me you're a liar.
That's pure speculation.
What's a little lie between friends?
Morning.
We're in better shape, but I don't think we're in wildly better shape.
Your Honor, I'd like to ask for a recess.
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
Good day, sir.
Seriously, what the? Why are you yelling?
Yes, thank you for being here. So excited. A big week for us on the show because we passed 100,000 subscribers, which we're very excited about. Kim is back, and you can always interact with us. We have an email, which is themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. Easy to remember, themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. And you can interact with us via comments and also in the live comments as well. So if you're listening live, you can jump on in YouTube. I want to mention Lucy McAllister. Oh, yes, smash it, please. Smash the like button. And also
Smash it with your iron rod.
subscribe to the show and share the show. That's how to help us with just expanding the show's footprint. Lucy McAllister, my favorite McAllister, with a $10 super sticker. Thank you very much. We're crowdfunded, so we appreciate the crowd funding us.
Big shout out.
And we make a big deal out of the people in the crowd who fund us. Do your taxes. What is this? Do your taxes. I'm done. Spencer Jaffe says for $5. I don't know what that refers to, but I definitely would. There is a growing movement in this country to not file your taxes. And I'm hearing all of these arguments about how, as an act of protest, you shouldn't. Don't try that. Okay. Don't. You are really messing with part of the government that does not give you a break. So James Pacheco said, did your seething at Trumpings targeting the San Francisco Presidio Trust in executive order, did you see, I guess that is, that Trump is targeting the San Francisco Presidio Trust in executive order? I did not see that, James Pacheco. Did you see that, Kim? I didn't. We can look into that. No, I will look into it. Thanks for the super chat. I truly will. I'm not just saying that. I'll look at that. Super sticker from Wes. Thank you for the
big shout out.
Yeah, big shout out to you. and I will put the rest of these, if I will, to the side because I want to get to David Katz, okay? But thank you, everyone. I will get to your comments and share them and respond as soon as David Katz and I are done talking. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
By the way, we did have and do have scheduled this thing. I just saw this. This is the Chris Cluey Huntington Beach City Council meeting. This is an act of civil disobedience that this guy who's a very high-profile NFL player, ex-NFL player. We do have that scheduled to run today, so we'll run it before the end of the show. You have to see it because I oftentimes get questions about what can we do, how can we make our voice heard. This guy, Chris Cluey, actually did it. Now, one of the leading voices when it comes to legal analysis across the English-speaking world, from Great Britain, BBC, Radio 1, to this country, from New York to Los Angeles, and across the News Nation, Fox News Channel. You've seen him across New Zealand and Australia. Wherever there is legal analysis, this guy is without peer. He was the former federal prosecutor. Now he works the defense side of the table. How about it for the great David Katz, everybody?
Mark,
Hello,
thank you
sir.
for that great introduction. Thank you.
It is so true. It's such a luxury to be able to speak with you. First, I want to address something that you might see as low-hanging fruit, because it seems like such an open and shut constitutional question, but it will likely be bumped up to the Supreme Court. And that's this issue of, and we've got a live poll on this as well, and that is birthright citizenship. In the poll, Albert, can you let David Katz know, where is the polling? Where are people predicting that SCOTUS will go with this?
Right now, it's 64% going with against Trump, and then 36% say with Trump. Okay,
so the issue of birthright citizenship, David, could you frame it for us briefly and just tell us what's going to happen when it will clearly end up at the Supreme Court? Isn't that true?
I think it will end up at the U.S. Supreme Court. And it is kind of low-hanging fruit because the Constitution is actually quite clear on this, the actual language of the 14th Amendment. This is the part of it, not like the Bill of Rights passed in the late 1700s. This is the part passed right after the Civil War. And one of the questions was, how do you make sure that Black citizens who had been, of course, held in slavery until the Civil War, until the Emancipation Proclamation, how did you, integrate them into the United States? Of course, they weren't very well integrated after Reconstruction failed in the South, and we had Jim Crow, and we had all the other problems with actual assimilation and integration into the whole body politic and the whole citizenry. But one thing that they did do after the Civil War was to make sure that the freed slaves would become citizens. And the way they did that was to say that anyone born in the United States was a citizen. So since it says so clearly that anyone born in the United States is a citizen, there's just no getting around it, even for this U.S. Supreme Court. In the language itself, there's one reservation, but that reservation turns out to be meaningless. The reservation is for foreign diplomats. So someone who was not under the jurisdiction of the United States. Now, you might wonder why they were so worried about it, but, England, France, these were powerful countries, more powerful than us after the Civil War. If someone by being a diplomat could become a U.S. citizen, then you also had this provision of the Constitution that a U.S. citizen only could become president. So some high-ranking diplomat from England, France, or whatever could end up being a citizen by birthright citizenship. So the exception was to deny those people from having birthright citizenship. But it applied to everyone else. There's no reservation whether your parents are in the country illegally. And there's even a U.S. Supreme Court case, Mark, from about 100 years ago, which involved either a Chinese, or I guess you'd call him Chinese American immigrant. He was born here, but in a circumstance which he wouldn't have been a U.S. citizen by the way some people want to interpret the Constitution. The Supreme Court said robustly that he could not be deprived entry into the United States after he traveled outside the United States because he had the same rights to travel as any other citizen and come back to the United States because he was a citizen. Why was he a citizen? The mere fact that he was born in the United States gave him birthright citizenship, according to the U.S. Supreme Court. Of course, this, I think, will make the Supreme Court look good, because it'll be one time, not like the presidential immunity case, not like some other cases we're scared about in the future where they rolled over for Trump. This will be one where they can say they stood up to Trump, but it's all kabuki. It's all performance art by Trump because Trump wants it as a bumper sticker. This one he knows he's not going to get, but his MAGA fans think, wow, we should do something. Let's amend the Constitution. Of course, they'll never amend the Constitution. That's way too hard.
That's such a great take that it's just a flex on the part of Trump. There is a bigger case, though, one that is not low-hanging fruit, and that involves Doge. I mean, this lawsuit from 14 attorneys general seeking to have Musk essentially pulled back. I mean, all these activities that he's been part of, this wrecking ball that he's taken to government and government agencies, there's been a recklessness and a ruthlessness to it. And so it's been challenged legally. Can you give me, because what I'm seeing is that the federal judge that ruled on this case really did not uphold a restraining order to prevent him from continuing these activities, or Doge to continue with these activities. Can you give me the state of the state on that and where that is likely to end up?
Well, one case this week was very disappointing because it was the judge Chutkan. She's the one who handled the presidential, not the presidential, I'm trying to say the insurrection case. The January 6th case. This is the one that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, got delayed by Trump's lawyers. It got delayed so long that Trump had gotten himself reelected before the case could ever go to trial or before it could even have important pretrial evidentiary hearings. Very, very disappointing. And I had no criticism of that judge, Judge Chutkan. She's appointed by Obama. I had no criticism of her handling of that case, but I do have criticism of her handling of this case. Of course, in the social media world, the right wing is all clucking, that even an Obama judge didn't stop what Musk was doing. I don't see it that way, but I think that she was either naive or she didn't quite get how much power she has to issue a temporary restraining order. There were two things that Musk, it looked like, was doing there. He and his minions were going to fire a bunch of people who I understand they were getting notices and they were being fired. I mean, everyone who reads the newspapers or looks at the media can see that all of these federal employees are being threatened with being fired or being fired. So part of her decision was that it's not sufficiently imminent that people are getting fired. I didn't understand that part of her ruling. But the other part of her ruling was that there was no irreparable harm just because Musk and his minions were getting into that data. It hadn't been shown yet that there was irreparable harm from him getting into that data. And that's why I think the judge was very naive. I think there was potential irreparable harm. As a judge sitting there, and I was a law clerk to a judge in Washington, D.C., and when Reagan came to power, he didn't do anything like this. But Reagan did things that the unions, workers, federal workers unions protested and so forth. Never anything like this. But when you don't know exactly what's happening and there's this whole web of mystery that Musk, his minions, and Trump have spread over all this. It is a government agency. Well, it doesn't look like a government agency. It's never been authorized by Congress. Then another judge said it looked like he was a government employee. Another judge said it sure looked like it was an agency like any other agency. No matter how it was set up, it had to conform to the law with things like complying with Freedom of Information Act requests and obeying the privacy law. So I thought there was enough there that it looked like he was getting into those records. He was not doing it according to rules and regulations. There was enough to say, stop right there. Don't continue letting him do what he's doing for another 10 days or 30 days until the next hearing, by which time it looked to me sufficiently likely that he and his group had pulled out records that they shouldn't have, that they had disposed of those records in a way that you could never put the genie back into the bottle. And he was not following rules and regulations. Now, down the road, she may do exactly what I'm saying she should do, but I do think it's a little bit of the genie out of the bottle because he will have had, he and his group, many weeks by then without a TRO being issued, many weeks by then to root around in there, rifle through those documents and not do it by rules and regulations. So I was disappointed with that ruling. If I can talk for just one more minute, there is another judge who's not allowed Musk and his minions to get into the Treasury payment records. People were very worried about that he could stop payments, that he could write over payments. If you really want to worry, that he could look to see who Democratic voters or activists were and mess around with their Treasury payments. He's been stopped as of now, still stopped, not allowed by an order of another judge to go rifle through those records, those Treasury records, even if he supposedly has the approval of the Treasury Secretary. And most of these cases, there's over 70 of them, Mark. Almost all of them, Musk has been prevented from doing what he's trying to do. But it's still mysterious, and he goes from agency to agency. Now he's into the IRS records, and they say they need to look at every single taxpayer's private IRS records, over 200 million Americans, so they can try to cut out fraud and waste. And people have said you can look at anonymized records. You don't need to know that it's Mark Thompson or David Katz. You can have an anonymized record. And if there are really 1 million people who are getting tax refunds that they're not entitled to, find that in the anonymized records, present to Congress, hey, there's 1 million people, here's our evidence. But of course, Trump and his minions have presented no evidence that there's any fraud or waste. It just looks like they want to look. I say this really with legal prudence. It looks like he's using this to look at his rivals' records, to find out about other companies, to find out their secrets, to take a competitive advantage. This is outrageous. It's outlandish, Mark.
Well, I have made the point repeatedly that the priorities that he seems to have assigned to those agencies that he's gone in to weed out fraud and abuse, which is utterly absurd. I mean, it's not being done with any sense of looking to see exactly what employees from a personnel standpoint are part of any fraud, any abuse, any inefficiencies, nothing. It's a total decapitation across the board. There's no way that represents any kind of actual examination of these things. But to the point, he is going after those agencies that have had issues with him. I mean, everything from USAID to the IRS. I mean, you can go right through the FAA. All of them have fined Musk or are in litigation with Musk. All of them. And he's trying to erase all of those departments and people who are associated with that. So I love that you touched on that. Now I want to double back to something else, which is that TRO and these injunctions, because they're different. From what I understand, David, and again, I'm only auditing the class. I grew up with a lot of lawyers in my family, but I didn't really ever go to law school. So my understanding of those injunctions and restraining orders, because this is very much to the point about Chutkin, is that they wanted a kind of an urgent restraining order to stop the bleeding right now. That's a TRO, temporary restraining order, right? And there is still the opportunity that they can get an injunction, but it'll take longer to get that, right? You present that sort of as a court case to the judge, and that's how you can stop the bleeding, but it will be weeks maybe before that can happen. Is that kind of a characterization that's fair?
The federal judge is supposed to balance the equities. One of the big factors to consider is who's likely to win in the end. Now, you can say, well, that's an awful rush to judgment. But I mean, a judge has to look at who's likely to win from what the judge knows at that point. And so it may be that in 3 or 4 weeks, when she does that balance again, she'll be able to say that now I understand a lot more what he's doing and it's not kosher. And so it looks like the state attorneys general, there are about 14 or 15 of them, will win in the end. Another thing, though, is there irreparable harm on one side or the other? And that's what I think she's getting very wrong here. Because what's the irreparable harm if Musk can only start rooting around 3 or 4 weeks from now? What's the irreparable harm? That they will have, there'll be 3 or 4 less weeks of supposed waste and fraud that will have been abated by letting him, by requiring 3 or 4 more weeks before he can do what he wants to do. But what's the irreparable harm on the other side? He steals records, finds records about his rivals, finds out stuff that could be used for blackmail or quiet extortion because he knows the bad health records of somebody. He knows the investigations that have been carried on of somebody else. He knows all of this privileged Privacy Act covered information, and he goes around and uses it. And yes, of course, he wouldn't admit it. But you know, the point is, it seemed to me that the irreparable harm of not issuing the TRO was much worse than the irreparable harm if she had issued the TRO. And then you look at what you could call the public interest, and you could say, well, there was public interest on the side of saving money. But since Musk and his lawyers in court never really showed what this waste and abuse was, what money they were saving, I think the public interest, these are established systems, these are people who've worked for the government, these are IT systems that are not tapped into. This is unprecedented. No one did this. When Biden came to power, when I mean, there were computer systems back in Reagan's day. Reagan didn't do this when he came into power after Carter. Clinton didn't do this after Bush. Biden didn't do this after Trump. Trump himself didn't do this when he came in after Obama. So this is totally unprecedented. So that's why I think she should have issued the temporary restraining order in that case, Mark.
Now to what Doge is and whether or not Musk is running it. This is, again, from Underdog, kind of touches on this. Counselor Katz, the White House says Elon Musk is an advisor to Trump, not the head of Doge. Who is the head of Doge? But I want to answer that question, but I also want to talk with you about the legal reason. It would seem it's like a legal workaround that Trump is saying that, oh, Musk isn't actually head of Doge. He's trying to protect legally, I believe, Musk's relationship and Musk's essential protections associated with being a personnel hire at the White House as opposed to being head of this department, which might be ruled illegal.
He's trying to very craftily help Musk not get sued. Because as things stand right now, Musk would be named maybe as an individual defendant in all of these lawsuits. I think probably Musk will be named as an individual defendant in a lot of the lawsuits anyway, because as the head of Doge, which, and if you try to maintain a fiction, if you're Trump, that it's some kind of government agency or it's some kind of government thing, then there are, immunities or qualified immunities for people acting for the government. It drives people crazy when the cops talk about their qualified immunity after some poor guy is choked out or beaten or shot, right? And the cops are talking about their qualified immunity. But there are immunities for government people that don't exist for private citizens. So if Musk is going to be left out there as just a private citizen, I think he's even more likely to be sued. So I don't think that's really going to help him much in that score. But they did file a responsive pleading, the Trump administration, in which they said to the court, I think in a declaration, that Musk was not the head of Doge, but they declined to say, and so far I don't think the judge has forced them to say, who is the head of Doge. I think at the end of the day, it may not be that big a deal, because if the Treasury Secretary says these people are special government employees or they're even independent contractors under a government contract, I think they would be allowed to do some of these things, but no more so than any other government official could. And that's what my thing is, and that's what Judge Chutkan got, but at least for the moment, she didn't do anything about, was that it's totally mysterious whether these people are following rules and regulations, whether they've had FBI clearances. I mean, for all we know, this is some great, spycraft by the North Koreans and the Russians, the Chinese. These people are receiving huge benefits from the Chinese, the Russians, to do these things. And that's what the FBI makes sure, that you're not a plant, that you're not on the payroll of some foreign intelligence service. That obviously has not been done. There has not been time for that to have been done, for that to have been done. Some of these Doge people were sent into these agencies days after the inauguration. So this is why I don't understand why all these judges don't stop this. But if you'd like to talk, one of these cases is now up on appeal on its way to the Supreme Court, and I hope we have a minute to talk about that case.
Of course. I mean, please go ahead.
So there's an office called the Office of Special Counsel, which confuses everybody because they think it's Jack Smith again or it's Robert Mueller again. This is a whole different special counsel. There's an office, an independent agency called the Office of Special Counsel. It's been around ever since, I think, President Carter. And its idea is to protect whistleblowers. And if the agency were not independent, then people would all think, well, how can I blow the whistle? It's just going to be another apparatchik of the administration, and they're going to tell the administration what I'm doing. It has to be independent. And Congress has always thought that it should be independent. It's been set up as being independent. Well, the head of it just got fired. And he actually has, he doesn't want to go out quietly like the head of the FBI went out talking about the rule of law, whatever he's talking about. His term ended and he didn't do anything about it. Maybe that was to save the FBI even worse damage. But this guy did not go out quietly. This guy filed a lawsuit and won. He was reinstated. The case then was appealed by the Trump administration to the DC Circuit. And this is so depressing to people who believe in the rule of law and who believe that it's not all politics. 2 judges appointed by Obama said that was fine for him to be reinstated. And 1 judge picked by Trump said, no, we should do something about it and not reinstate him. But the bottom line is that the DC Circuit said he can keep his post. He can keep his independent post. And the Trump administration has now filed an emergency appeal, Mark, to the U.S. Supreme Court, saying that no, this guy should be yanked out of his post and not reinstated, which is the status quo. So there's a couple of things that the U.S. Supreme Court may do. It may destroy the republic as we know it and say that, take the case and say on an expedited basis that basically Trump is at least the king of the executive branch, that everything we think of as an independent agency is not an independent agency. There's reason to think that they won't do that, especially with this case. There's two ways they can avoid destroying the republic soon in this case. One, they can say it's not really an emergency. Whether this fellow is allowed to keep his job as the head of the whistleblower independent agency or not, it's just not an emergency that the Supreme Court has to deal with on its emergency docket. And that's what I think they're going to do. People are watching the case to see if there are concurring dissenting opinions. Let's say Gorsuch or Kavanaugh were to write any kind of an opinion in that case, it would be right. It would be examined by legal experts and just the general public to see how are they leaning on it. The other thing that they could do is they actually, I believe, if they take the case, I think that they could affirm this particular act. And if I can get a little inside baseball.
Yeah, because I want to know, when you say affirm this particular act, I want you to explain what you mean by that. But
keep him in his job. They could actually keep him in his job in a decided case on the merits that this particular person could be kept in his job. And this whole issue is very fraught. It's very worrisome. People are worried, oh my God, the EPA, all these agencies could fall. All these independent agencies could fall. This is all up to the president. I think when they fall, Trump cannot get rid of the EPA, just like he can't get rid of these other independent offices that you can think about. But it may be that he can fire the head of them. That may be where it ends up going on something like the EPA, the SEC. We saw that with the Consumer Products Commission in a case a couple of years ago, where it looked like the president could, the Supreme Court was saying the president could get rid of the head of it. So all these things about a 5-year term for the head of these agencies, that could be invalidated by the U.S. Supreme Court as being beyond the separation of powers. That's the pro-president view. That's that the president can decide who performs these executive functions. And so the president could fire the head of the EPA, even if he had a term. He can fire the head of the FBI, even though the head of the FBI had a term. He can do all those kinds of things. But Roberts, in the decision that everyone's looking at, Chief Justice Roberts, he said, well, the reason they can do that is you look at someone like the Consumer Agency, Mark, they have so much power over private citizens. They're almost like taking lawsuits. They're sort of unreviewable. Actually, they don't have much power, and I don't think that they really abuse it. But from Roberts's point of view, they have a lot of power. They can reach into the banks. They can reach into the payday lenders. They can tell all these people what to do in the public. And that's executing the laws. Someone with that much power, the president has the right to have his guy or his gal execute the laws, and they can oust these people 5-year term or no 5-year term set by Congress. And to the extent Congress meant that they have a 5-year term and the person has to be kept from one administration to the other, that violates the president's, this is the sort of a little bit of the unitary executive, and that the president can execute the law through the president's people. But Roberts said in that case, that doesn't mean that every independent agency is a violation of the president's prerogatives. There may be some, and he mentioned this one in particular. This one was particularly mentioned as one that really doesn't have much power. What they do, it only pertains to the government. All they really do, if you're a government whistleblower and you say, look, my boss is going to fire me and make it look like I'm incompetent, but I'm not incompetent. He's going to fire me because I'm blowing the whistle, and I want you to deal with my whistleblower complaint. And then if you do get fired, there's something called the Merit Protections Board that you can go in front of if you're a fired government employee, and you can say, I want you to find that it was not any incompetence, anything I did wrong, insubordination. It was because I was a whistleblower. And that's all that this person does. And so Roberts already picked this one out as one that does not violate. It's minor enough. Congress could set it up. It's not the core executive privileges like running the EPA is, like running the SEC is, like running the FBI is. And so therefore, that could happen in this case. But if Katz is wrong on that, if this is really D-Day, The D-Day one is that he can fire any head of any independent agency, notwithstanding the term limit that might have been set by Congress. And that's just the idea that in the Constitution, the president appoints executive officers, not the Congress. And so the Congress cannot appoint them, and the Congress cannot, by setting a term, keep them after the president no longer gets them. That's what the majority of the Supreme Court will say, and that will really be the demise of independent agencies. They can't abolish the agency, Mark. They can't cut the funding. That's within the prerogative of Congress. Set up the agency, set up its mission, set up its rules, approve its budget. But under this extreme view, which may be the one that they take, I hope that they don't, he could fire the head.
That's extraordinary. So to be clear on that, the agency would still exist. The agency, as you say, would still be funded, but the president could direct those funds by virtue of the fact that he's directed the head of the agency in one way or another, right?
The EPA would have to clean up all of this fire damage and all this terrible things that we have in Southern California. It would have to preserve all sorts of things that it has to preserve. It has to carry out all of its missions. Now, of course, the head of it, that was a Trumpian one and not a Biden one, might, in our opinion, case by case, do it less vigorously, do it in a different way.
Slow walk any help to California or any blue state or any, he could do that whole political grievance thing.
At some point, if Congress made clear what they wanted it to do, then there would be a lawsuit over that. You see, Mark, that head of it, that new head of it, appointed by Trump after he fired the old one, whether the old one had a term or not, was slow walking a particular thing, was not following out the mission as set out by Congress.
I've got so much. I want to touch on Eric Adams with you. Can we touch on that? Okay, real quick. Let's touch on Eric Adams. What's the state of the state? This is the mayor of New York. Mayor of New York indicted the Federalist Society prosecutor from the Southern District, resigning because she's been now told no, we're dropping the case against Adams because he's going to cooperate with the feds on immigration strategies that are being imposed in Manhattan. Speak to this. Where is this legally? And there's been it's not just the one person there at the Southern District who's resigned.
There are 8 prosecutors who, many of them make a career out of this. Some people like myself, we stay 6 or 7 years. Someone like Adam Schiff did that. That's also the norm in the government, that people do it for 6 or 7 years and then go on to the next challenge in their professional career. But there are people who stay for, 20 years. And these tended to be people who had more made it a career. They weren't just there for 6 or 7 years and going to do something more exciting or challenging next. Those people resigned, 8 of them, including, and this is very important for people to understand, the acting U.S. attorney. But she wasn't just some deep state person who moved up to that job. She was actually picked by Trump a few weeks ago. But the problem was that she was being asked to do something, and this is why all the federal prosecutors around the country, over 1,000, have signed a petition supporting her. She was being asked to do something that was illegal and unethical, and she wanted to preserve her bar license. I think she's very heroic in this thing, but she was also really compelled, and an ethical lawyer would be compelled, and that's why 8 of them quit. Now, they could have dressed this thing up, but this Emil Bove, whose claim to fame is that I'm not making this up, he's President Trump's criminal defense lawyer. He's now the acting number 2 person in the Department of Justice. He was looking around for someone to sign this thing, like the Saturday Night Massacre. He was looking for his Bork who would sign this thing, and he finally found one. But before that, people had resigned all over the place. And then finally, and then this is the famous one where the deep state person who moved up when she did quit, that person also resigned. And that person said, you'd have to be a fool or a coward to sign that request to dismiss. And the reason that this request to dismiss, Mark, is so controversial is it's not based on newly discovered evidence. It's not based on a change in the law. It was corruption out loud. It was not hidden corruption. It's, first of all, a dismissal without prejudice, which means that they have the sword of Damocles over the head of Mayor Adams. And the minute that he doesn't do their bidding, they can say, oh, we decided that case that we were temporarily dismissing against you, well, we're reinstating it, we're going ahead with it, because it wasn't a dismissal with prejudice. As we lawyers say, it wasn't won and it wasn't done. it was still going to be pending against him, but not being proceeded against. So that was terrible. But on top of that, they admitted out loud that the reason for it was not a change in the law or newly discovered evidence that weakened the case to the point that the prosecutors didn't want to pursue it. It was so that he would have more time and not be troubled by the fact he had pending criminal charges, so he could spend more time doing the Trump agenda on getting rid of illegal immigrants in New York City. It was clownish. And then to make the clown show even more ridiculous, what's the third act of this 3-act circus? They have this thing on Fox TV. I'm not making this up either. People haven't seen it. They won't believe what I'm telling them. The head of this ICE now, this guy Homan, Homan goes on the couch with Mayor Adams. They're sitting there on Fox in the morning, and Homan says, I'm going to be up your butt, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be up your butt, Mr. Mayor, to make sure that you live up to your end of the bargain and help me deport these illegal aliens in New York City. And people are like aghast. This is not the secret recording of the people breaking the law. This is the Fox News out to the world of the people breaking the law. So this Emil Bove guy, he shows up, and he's the guy I said he's not fit for the Trump administration. Not because he's too stupid or too vengeful, but because he's not good looking. So I predict, this is not a Katz, but I predict since he's not good looking, he'll be thrown to the wolves at some point fairly soon by Trump. But until he's thrown to the wolves, he showed up in U.S. District Court before the judge. And the reason he did that, Mark, is because the prosecutor cannot unilaterally dismiss a case once it's filed at court. The prosecutor could unilaterally decide not to pursue a case before indictment. But once it's indicted and it's at court, you have to have the leave of the judge. Now, that's not as vigorous as you might think because it's very routinely granted. One of the problems is if the judge denies it and the prosecutor doesn't want to prosecute the case, what are you going to do? Appoint a special prosecutor? That would seem like it would be beyond, that if judges run around appointing special prosecutors, Mark, that's not the separation of powers, right? That's the judiciary, which is supposed to decide cases, bringing cases. So it's not clear what his remedy is, but it looks like what his remedy is going to be, the judges, is before he decides whether to dismiss this case or not, which is within his power to dismiss it or not, he wants to appoint a special prosecutor, not to prosecute it, but he wants to appoint a special lawyer to come and tell him what the public interest is, because he's only got 2 lawyers in court. Mayor Adams' lawyer, who says, this is a great idea. This is a great idea. Take the noose from off around my neck. And he's got this Emil Bove, Trump's criminal defense attorney, now become deputy attorney general acting, to say, yes, we want to take the noose off his neck, not all the way off, but we want to do that little thing where it's still around his neck, but it's not pulling. You got 2 people in the court telling him the same thing. And the judge is like, I want to hear from an independent attorney to tell me what the other side of the coin is. And the other side of the coin is that it's corrupt. And just one more thing. They asked this Bove guy, they asked him in federal court, they said, so is there any precedent for this? And he had to admit, no, they've never done anything like this. And they said, well, you could do this around the country, couldn't you? And he said, well, yes, it's lawful. Can you imagine, Mark? They threatened mayors and Democratic officials around the country with criminal prosecution, because if they can do what they did with the mayor, they can do this with anybody. They can say you're under investigation for corruption, but we're not going to file the case against you as long as you do X, Y, and Z, which may be the same thing.
That may be the strategy.
Illegal aliens around the country. This is an outrage, Mark.
Yeah, this might be the strategy more and more, as you say, because they're investigating the investigators. They're going after mayors, potentially. I mean, it would be an expressed strategy that we've heard from Patel, for example, who just got confirmed today. Now, the sexiest story, I think, of all of the legal stories we have for you, David Katz.
Wow.
It doesn't involve sex, but it is sexy. Because I think it involves something as a clapback on the part of CBS in the CBS lawsuit that is truly fascinating. So just to set the stage, CBS being sued by Trump the same way ABC was sued by Trump. ABC tapped out, settled. They have Disney, ABC. They got business with the federal government, didn't want to be on the bad side of Donald Trump. CBS did the 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. He sued for several $1 million. It was a basic shakedown. They also didn't want to be on the bad side of Donald Trump because CBS/Paramount, They've got another deal, merger, that needs to get approval by the federal government. So they don't want to get on the bad side. So they look like they were going to settle. But wait, Trump upped the amount that he wanted to $20 billion. And that's a huge number. And now this whole thing has been thrown into maybe a courtroom. So lawyers who are representing CBS are saying in federal court that they, and this is the sexy part, are going to need President Trump's personal financial information if his $20 billion lawsuit against the company is going to move to what they call the discovery phase. You can explain what the discovery phase is and how they really oftentimes, when there is a lawsuit like this, do get to look at finances because they're trying to determine, as I understand it, sort of the financial legitimacy, if you will, of the whole thing. So that's my summary, setting the stage. Correct me on anything that's wrong and tell me about how this might end up, because Trump certainly doesn't want to surrender his financial information.
Well, I'm going to treat you like Rachel Maddow. She does on her show. Yes, Mark, you explained everything brilliantly, says her guest. But yes, you did. There are compensatory damages. And the idea is if you lose something, you get compensation for what you've lost. But in addition to that, our civil law allows punitive damages in many cases. And the idea is to punish the person in an amount that that person and other people contemplating doing what they just did will not do it, that they'll be deterred. But of course, punitive damages and how much you punish somebody depends how much they have. If someone has $1 billion, $1 million isn't much if you have $1 billion. And so one of the things you're entitled to in discovery to find out from the other side and make the other side tell you is how much money do they have in these cases where people want punitive damages. And so they said, okay, Trump, we want you to tell us how much money do you have? How much is that crypto thing of yours worth? How much is invested in it? What are its assets? We want to know about, all of the other things, all of Trump's businesses. I forget what they are right now. Trump Social or Truth Social, whatever it's called. And so it's very clever. And CBS has good lawyers. And I think that they were very smart to ask for that. And I think that case, they said in the papers that there had been some settlement talks. And, all these companies that are so worried that if they're not in with Trump, they'll do badly. And if they are in with Trump, they'll do great. Just remember, Elon Musk used to have $400 billion. Now he has $300 billion. Musk, well, he's gotten all of this publicity while he's on this, he's the South African immigrant on this big crusade, including to allow Afrikaners to come here, not other Africans, not black Africans, but white Afrikaners. They've been treated so terribly. They need to have refuge in this country. While Musk is doing all these things, he's worth $100 billion less. Being Trump's friend, doing all of these things, Tesla has tanked. People don't want to buy Teslas anymore. Maybe they'll buy them in China, but they shouldn't want to buy them here. And he's gone from a $400 billion fortune to $300 billion. So you know what? CBS, and if stand up to Trump, I bet you'll do just fine. People will watch CBS more. To be known as the station that didn't knuckle under to Trump, wow, that makes me want to watch CBS.
Yeah, I might push back on you on that. I mean, obviously you're describing what would be a virtuous thing that they're doing, which is pushing back on this nuisance suit. It's a shakedown. This is an absolute shakedown on the part of the federal government.
It's over Kamala Harris that they supposedly improperly edited. They didn't do anything wrong. They had a tease, which was a little different from what was actually edited on the air during the show. They have to save time on these TV shows.
No, it's standard. There was nothing that they did here that was in any way different than things that they normally do. It was but the reason I'm pushing back or just suggesting something else is that it's not just about who's watching CBS and like their image and like I'll watch CBS because they push back on Trump or they seem to have pursued a virtuous line. Remember, they're looking for regulatory approval of mergers. This is a much bigger company than just CBS. CBS is just a small part of what Paramount is and now what this new merger is going to be. And on that, David, they may lose out because Trump, out of pure spite, may see to it that his government doesn't approve their merger.
But, we still have the rule of law. If the merger's not approved, CBS and Paramount will go to court. They'll get a federal judge with life tenure who rule that there was no reason. They have to follow proper Administrative Procedure Act things. They have to win in court. So a wrongful, do you remember when, excuse me, I guess AT&T was trying to buy CNN, and Trump the first time around did everything he could. They wanted to spin off CNN and do all that kind of stuff. I don't know. AT&T might have wished that they had spun off CNN. I don't think they made too much money with my old station, but the point is that it didn't work. It didn't work. They kept CBS. They got the merger approved. I'm sorry. They kept CNN. They got the merger approved. AT&T did. They had, I think, great lawyers. And so that's what's going to happen. So this whole idea that we're a banana republic and that everyone has to kowtow to El Generalissimo, this is not the world that we live in. You can be El Generalissimo. Trump's gone down in the polls. Eggs have gone up. Milk has gone up. Gasoline is about to go up. He's so unpopular. And Mark, you and I have both been alive during presidents when they got to be really unpopular. Bush's dad got to be that point against Clinton in '92. His name just became a joke. And his supposed followers, remember, he'd been at 80% in the polls, Bush's dad had been. And suddenly, when it's over, when the people start to be, repulsed by you or your policies or feel this kind of revulsion that I think people are feeling toward Trump, this Elon Musk thing, this is unbelievable. You see, Time Magazine put him at the Oval Office
Resolute desk. Yeah. I mean,
and then Sean Kennedy did that stupid thing where he said it's like interviewing two brothers. It's like, can you imagine Hannity, Musk, and Trump?
Hannity does the damage control, and Hannity
he tries.
Yeah,
he tries, but that triumvirate, Mark, is that's not what that's not what the Trump voters voted for. And so I think things are really going the other way. I think people who are I'm upset about the Kash Patel thing. Do we have 2 minutes to talk about Kash Patel?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's horrifying. Go ahead, please.
Well, it's horrifying that he's going to be the head of the FBI. Even McConnell voted for him. I mean, McConnell cast, two votes that made sense on Tulsi Gabbard, against Tulsi Gabbard, and against RFK Jr., right? But now he's back supporting Kash Patel. And I mean, people who believe that law enforcement should be nonpartisan, which used to be everybody. If you went around and you asked people, should the head of the FBI open an investigation because he has an enemies list, they would say no. No one with an enemies list should ever be confirmed to be head of the FBI. They've gone after, he's wanted a list, remember this, of all the people who worked on the January 6 cases. And it's unbelievable. It's not just the Trump cases. You could maybe see that Trump wanted to retaliate because he's that kind of vengeful person against the people who investigated him. These are the people who investigated the January 6th, FBI agents who investigated January 6th marauders where 5 people died at the Capitol. Every FBI agent, every U.S. attorney thought that was a righteous case because, as I say, 5 people died. They broke into the Capitol. They stormed the place. They threatened to hang the vice president. So I don't understand it at all. Murkowski and Collins, they did the right thing and they voted against him. And this is terrible. And the idea that when the Democrats retake power in less than 4 years, of course, they're going to fire him. They're not going to respect his supposed term. But the Democrats can never play this game. They're going to find someone with the judgment of Solomon who has no enemies list, and they'll be the Democrats, nominee.
Yeah, I mean, you're very optimistic.
They're never going to play. No, the Democrats can never play. The other side can never play on this enemies list. And of course, everybody's going to bring up, I'm a criminal defense attorney now. I'm just waiting for a client to say that, I did such and such a thing. I contributed, $2,000 to Kamala Harris. I did such and such, and now I've been selected for a criminal investigation. And it used to always be that everyone would roll their eyes. Federal judges aren't going to roll their eyes anymore when you bring up selective prosecution with someone who admittedly has an enemies list. One problem is that federal judges can't do very much if he merely opens an investigation and makes someone's life miserable. It never has to go in front of a federal judge. And the last thing is that the conservatives were screaming for years that they ought to have a warrant before they opened an investigation, that the deep state was going after conservatives and they ought to get a warrant before they did these FISA investigations. And Patel claimed that he was all for that. Well, now Patel has changed his mind. No, they shouldn't have to go get a warrant before they opened a FISA investigation. So something that conservatives claim that they cared about, they don't care about. as long as their man is wearing the crown at the FBI.
My God, the hypocrisy out of the GOP, and I'm sure if they're GOPers, maybe you'll find it in the Democrats, but I don't think you'll find it on the level. These guys are gold medalist winners when it comes to hypocrisy. I mean, look at what they've done with the Supreme Court. You know, where there was an open seat, that whole issue with McConnell, and then, of course, a month before the election, they filled the seat. I mean, it's just there are more double standards and hypocrisy when it comes to the law out of the GOP than I can even keep track of. I did have one more thing I wanted to ask you, and it's an immigration-related thing, but don't have a lot of time, so I really need to keep it tight. There's a Venezuelan who was bringing a class action on the part of other Venezuelans who are being protected because under the Biden administration, this group of people received federal protection, presidential protection, to remain in this country. She's working, she's doing, and she's the lead plaintiff in this suit. And now there was a revocation of her protection. She lives in Culver City, California, and she's suing now over this executive order that could have her deported in a little more than a month. Okay, so the lawsuit is saying that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who has revoked this protection, has illegally revoked this 18-month extension of a temporary protection status that Joe Biden had granted Venezuelans. So Noem's order reverses that status, not only for her, but for 350,000 Venezuelans living in the United States. So this 49-year-old woman, she's a food delivery driver, as I say, she and the other 350,000 Venezuelans could lose that protected status. They could get shipped out of America, and another 250,000 might lose that in September. Speak to this case and this lawsuit and what her chances might be of remaining in this country. And might she just be able to stall the way the Trump people stall so much and remain in the country that way?
Well, I hope that she does well. Obviously, if I were in office, I wouldn't have taken that action against her and people who are similarly situated to her. There was a very good reason why they extended the time that Venezuelans could stay here. I mean, the government of Maduro down there is awful. It's authoritarian. It's worse than that. I mean, people are starving and everything. They have very good reason to not want to be in Venezuela. They seem
and the point is, just to put a point on it, after I've told you I need to keep it tight. But in other words, for asylum qualification, you need only to look at Venezuela and see the situation you've just described to know that they are deserving of being asylees.
And the idea is if you do each one of those asylum applications individually, you get to about the same result, that the majority of people are going to qualify. So instead of going through immigration court after immigration court case, the administration is allowed to give this blanket permission. And it's like people from Venezuela, Haiti is overrun by criminal gangs. And there's a couple of other countries. And they say, look, for the next 3 years, you could stay here because we don't see the situation getting any better. We don't see Maduro falling. We don't see the criminal gangs in Haiti falling and it being a place where you wouldn't be politically persecuted. But I think, unfortunately, a new administration can probably revoke that because I think it's administrative act. I don't think it's one by the there may be rules. They may have to go through the Federal Register and announce it within a certain amount of time. But this is why elections really matter. These people couldn't vote, but people voting about the quality of life in this country and what we want to do with people who are suffering so terribly in Venezuela or Haiti. Certainly under Biden, it seemed like people wanted them to be allowed to stay here, at least until the situation improved in their countries. And now that this may be one of the things that the MAGA people care a lot about. And this may be one that Trump's willing to spend his political capital on and really fight this thing. And these people may be in trouble and they may not be able to delay it a long time because the judge may say, since they have a right to revoke it, they have a right to revoke it as long as they went through the proper federal rulemaking procedures. And if they did that, Congress could come to their rescue. Congress does have a lot of authority over immigration, but is the Republican Congress really going to go to bat for the poor Venezuelans and Haitians?
No,
don't bet on it.
No. Yeah.
I wish her luck with her lawsuit, though. I do.
Yeah. David, so appreciate you, and I look forward to, I feel as though we need to have you on a hotline because they just serve up these legal or questionable legal offerings almost by the hour. And so you have judges issuing a restraining order, lifting a restraining order. You have Kash Patel. It's going to be, I mean, Kash Patel, as you've just said, he's going to be serving up investigations like a short order chef out of the FBI. It's going to be scary. And,
well, I said already that if people are working at the FBI and either get fired on these baloney bases, or if they just don't want to work at the FBI anymore under Kash Patel, I sure hope that we increase in some of these blue states our own state Bureau of Investigation, and we hire some of these people. It would be wonderful to get some of these really competent, really principled people. And there's no reason why. I tell you, Mark, I know you're talking about the potholes, but we're a rich state. There's no reason why we can't have more criminal investigators here and go after frauds. Many of them are state-based as well as federally based. They could bring a lot of these huge fraud cases that ought to be brought. And if the federal government doesn't want to bring it because it's against rich people, California, Maryland, New York can bring it. And some of the same scammers that, let's say, the consumer agency goes after, we could go after here. Why not increase ours a little bit and at the same time have a place for these principled FBI agents to work in our states? By the way, I can't be with you more often, Mark, because I have I'm a working lawyer. I have an active
yeah, you're a defense attorney.
What?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're so generous with your time. We love you. Thank you.
Not representing any Trumpsters, not representing a one. Just normal business people in trouble. A lot of times in trouble with the IRS. You know, they're getting rid of 7,000 employees at the IRS. Guess what they do, Mark? Compliance and audits.
Of course.
Right? They audit people.
And sadly, you know, these are guys who want to balance the budget. Where do you get money? You get money from the revenue created by the IRS.
Times your salary. Every IRS employee. So if they fired 7,000 of them, multiply that by 12 times. That's revenue that we didn't collect because they fired people who help us collect revenue.
It's one of the most efficient agencies in government, the IRS. So thank you so much, David. David Katz, everybody.
Great to be with you.
See you soon, man. Thank you.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Who's Mark Thompson?
The Mark Thompson Show.
We are so far behind, and I blame
you.
All right, maybe it's my fault. Peter, you are so generous. I'm just seeing it. Happy 100,000 subscribers.
Woo!
I would be interested in an economist segment that traces how the layoffs and department cuts affect both D.C. and folks way beyond D.C. Reporting is scant in this area. Well, I have a pipeline of some great guests coming, and I am looking into economists. This is something that I'll just give you a little kind of inside the show sort of thing. In addition to finding things that are important to talk about, I need to, when the guest, find a guest who can explain it in a way that we can all understand it. You know what I mean? It's great to have a PhD professor in economics, but I need the information to be communicated well. And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm also looking for that in the area of foreign policy. I think I've found some leads on that, but we have some really outstanding guests coming up. Timothy Snyder's coming up next week. He's a brilliant historian and author and has written a book on tyranny, and he's a multiple best-selling author. I have a great author and expert on the rise of Christian nationalism in the Republican Party and beyond. And so these are high-profile guests. So I will find you somebody on the economy, and it's also breaking down aspects of economics that we can get into without it getting too overwhelming. I mean, I've even tried to enterprise some stuff on my own, but it gets very in the weeds, and I just don't want to lose everybody because the figures and the bar graphs get a little bit overwhelming. But thank you for that. I will work on that.
Speaking of guests, can I tell you that I booked David Pakman coming up next month? I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, David Pakman is terrific, and I'm excited that he's coming through. Yeah, we got to get BTC, Brian Tyler Cohen, back as well. Asbjorn Knutson with a $50 Norwegian kroner, I think that is. SEAL Team 6 can be pardoned by President Elon and Felon. So all are scared with good reason. Felon just sold out Europe and Ukraine. I'm angry and afraid. This is a scary time. It definitely a scary time. I lost faith in SCOTUS. GOP scouts are bought and paid for. Yeah, I don't. I think GOP SCOTUS appointments are bought and paid for. It's certainly true. Sandra Thomas, thank you for a $20 super sticker. Wow, thank you. We need it, and I appreciate that. So appreciate all the support we've gotten from the audience. Limit golfing and travel for prison felons. Save big money, says Asbjorn with a $20 super chat. Sad to see the smart, evil turtle leave his pond. That's related to Mitch McConnell, of course. Luis says Trump logic equals the fleet at Pearl Harbor was responsible for the Japanese bombing of the harbor. They started it. Hashtag ridiculous logic on Ukraine. Yeah, the Ukraine thing is right out of the Putin hymnal. It's scary. Harry Magnan says, what does MAGA support? Why does MAGA support communists? And is it okay to change my name to McAllister?
Yes. Come on over.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
You know, Harry Magnan, thank you for the $5 super chat. There used to be, I mean, it was in the DNA of the GOP that they were so anti-communist. I mean, you know, you look at the Red Scare and all of that. I mean, it's wild to see them swing over to the Russians in this way that, you know, is so, they probably have a whiplash from how quickly all of a sudden they're in with Putin. It's scary. Asbjorn says, Grok can take a hike not using the swastika AI. Yeah, that's on the Elon Musk stuff, his AI. How long? Maybe Osborne should get his own show because these are all Osborne thing.
He paid for the comments. There they are.
Can we see how much a kroner is, Albert? Because he's getting a lot of time on my show. How long can President Fellon gaslight 47% on the price of? By the way, let me just say something about President Fellon and all the rest. As you know on this show, I do not call Trump names. I don't call him President Fellon. I don't call him the Orange Man. I don't make fun of his weight. I don't make fun of his hair. I don't do it. You guys can do it if you want. I'll read these comments out loud, but I don't want you to think that's not my style. I think there's so much legitimately wrong with Trump and his policies and his strategies. I don't need to insult him personally, but I understand why you would, okay? Please don't get me wrong. I mean, in Trump, you have someone who has, it's extraordinary the kind of insults that he threw at Biden, that he threw at Marco Rubio, that he threw at everybody who's an adversary. So he is a rude, boorish, insult-filled guy. So I understand why you would insult him, but I just want to make it clear that's not who I don't do that. It's just not my thing. But so when I'm reading these, yeah.
You wouldn't call him Mango Mussolini or Peach Pol
It's just
Pot.
not my jam, man.
Yeah,
and I'm also probably not clever enough to think of a really good nickname. How long can President Fellon gaslight 47% on the price of eggs, inflation, destroyed needed institutions, and siding with evil like Putin? Well, here is the story. I mean, there is a question, and David Katz was mentioning this as well. When will it bite back? When will that tide break back on his followers? I'd suggest over immigration, never. They don't care. You wrap up all the illegal immigrants or undocumented immigrants that you want. These high-profile busts. They had Dr. Phil. They alert all the local media as to what's happening because they want that coverage. It helps their brand. But the reality is there's economic damage done by getting rid of people. They're getting rid of these undocumented immigrants the same way they're getting rid of federal employees, haphazardly, without regard for who these people are, what they're actually doing. I'm seeing no coherence to this immigration policy. So while we all agree that there has to be a policy and it has to be pursued in an aggressive way, the idea somehow that there could be just kind of a naked aggression without regard to who these people are or how they contribute. Look at that Venezuelan woman. That Venezuelan woman and the other 350,000 people who are part of that suit against the government, most of them are probably productive. Look at the DACA kids are all productive. The DACA kids are, now they're not kids, they've grown up. Mm-hmm. They're more productive than any random grab of the same number of Americans born in this country. Per capita, the DACA kids are incredible. They're incredible in terms of education, in terms of a clean law enforcement record. I mean, a work record that's respectable. It's extraordinary. So I don't know when it will break back on their people, but it won't be around immigration. It will be around the economy, probably. Listeners literally love levels logistically leveled. Listeners love levels leveled loosely less. Scott Rittenberg.
You didn't even stumble over that.
That relates to the levels.
Beautiful.
I'm trying to get the audio levels where we want them. So,
nice.
Yeah. Trump coherence is an oxymoron. Yeah, he does love the chaos. It's true, Harry Magnan. Thank you for the $5 super chat. I did want to get into, and I can't now because we're kind of wrapping up, got a really kind of moving email, and I want to share that with you, so I guess I'll share that with you tomorrow. I'm just looking. Yeah, I really just can't get into any more today.
No, you know what else we didn't do is the Huntington Beach NFL player, and we'll do that tomorrow too, maybe.
Yeah, that would be good. And because it also leads to a broader conversation about what can be done. And I got an email about that today too, so I will. I did promise you that I would follow up on the Presidio Trust. And yeah, Trump has moved to slash the Presidio Trust agency that runs the historic Presidio Park in San Francisco. So we are a show that came out of San Francisco, and one of our listeners, viewers, pointed this out. And indeed, a sweeping executive action that President Trump signed yesterday to all but eliminate certain federal agencies will include and indeed target San Francisco's beloved Presidio. The, quote, reduction of the federal bureaucracy order, whenever stuff is called that, it means, something crappy's going on. The reduction of the federal bureaucracy order calls for shrinking agencies that the administration deems unnecessary to minimize government waste and abuse. And they're going to fly this flag of waste and abuse, and they're going to get rid of everything dear to us. When you talk about clean water, clean air, trying to keep the soil detoxified, USDA, FAA. And these are, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. They're doing that. These are the protections and regulations that are desperately needed in this country. And still, they go, the reduction of the federal bureaucracy. We want to reduce the federal bureaucracy. Anyway, so the 1,500-acre park called the Presidio looks out on the Golden Gate Bridge, San Francisco Bay. It's gorgeous. It's stunning. It's one of 4 agencies that's been ordered to eliminate its non-statutory operations to the maximum extent consistent with applicable law. And the Presidio Trust is statutory. It has been protected from assaults over time by that statutory strength. Nancy Pelosi saying we will be carefully reviewing the language of the president's executive order and its purpose. The order also targets the Inter-American Foundation, the United States African Development Foundation, and the United States Institute of Peace. But yes, the Presidio is on the chopping block. Thank you, Mark and Kim, for letting me have a small spot on your show. Best wishes from Norway. Well, Asbjorn, I was going to say the same thing to you. Thank you for letting me have a small spot on your show. Yeah, that's exactly it. The Asbjorn Show. At least we know when we go to Norway, we've got a place to stay. That's all I'm saying. Someone to show us around. Kim is back, so she'll do the after party next. Tomorrow, it's a Friday Fabulous Florida, Michael Schur and more. We will show you that video from Huntington Beach of that NFL punter who took matters into his own hands and stood up at a meeting there and made a point. And we'll read a couple of emails that we've gotten that really meant a lot to me, and some of them are very moving, so we'll get into that. Shadow, if you will, take us out, please.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone, for your support.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
Out of time. Until tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.